Good evening and welcome to everyone who's with us here this evening. It is Tuesday, October 18th. It is 6 o'clock. This is the meeting of the Ways and Means Committee of the Greenfield City Council. This meeting is taking place on Zoom. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G, no person shall address a meeting of a public body, without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body. If after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or another officer to remove the person from the meeting. We will do a roll call vote. Councilor DeSorger.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councilor Healy.
Here.
Councilor Toronto.
Right here.
Thank you. And Councilor Gola.
Here.
I am Councilor Forgy. We have a full house tonight, which is great. All right. We have the approval of 3 separate minutes. I'd like to take them one at a time, if I may, because there are 2 adjustments that I found. So let's move to the first one, the minutes of August 16th, 2022. May I have a motion that we accept these minutes as read?
So moved.
A second on that, please.
I'll second if you put Mike for first there.
Okay, no problem.
Okay?
Yep, that's good. And in the discussion, I'd like to say that basically there is a comment in there that says that the treasurer's interest, I believe it is this on, I might have the wrong meeting, I'm not sure, is 14%, as it refers to it as 16%. I believe it's 14% interest.
I think it's 14.
So I'd just like to see that correction made. The rest of the minutes seem to be fine.
Good job.
So if there's no further discussion on that, all in favor with the adjustment being made of 14%, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are accepted. The second set of minutes, this would be September 12th. May I have a motion that we accept the minutes as read?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor DeSorger. I need a second.
Second that one.
Thank you very much. Are there any discussion about this at all? Okay. All in favor of these minutes, please indicate, say aye.
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 Any objections? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Those minutes are accepted. And this is for September 20th. I need a motion to accept the minutes of September 20th, please.
So moved. Councilor Healy.
Thank you. A second.
I'll second that.
Thank you,
Councilor Golub.
Mrs. Golub.
Catherine.
Thank you. Okay, are there any discussions? All right, I do have one correction that I'd like to make. This is when we refer to the discussion we were having on what it takes for the city to accept payment for back taxes. I would like to add addition to the line that says there, we could do checks, credit card, cash, whatever. I wanted to say checks made payable to the city of Greenfield. That would be my only correction to that. So anybody objects to that? Okay. If there are no objections, all in favor of this with the correction, please indicate aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions?
I'm going to
All
abstain,
right.
but I watched you.
Oh, you're going to abstain, Ginny?
Yes, I wasn't there, but I watched you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have a number of new business items today. I am going to take everything in order. The money pieces have to go out there. They are time sensitive, so we will take those first. Right now, I need a motion to take from the table. And let me bring that up here. Please bear with me. Okay, we have a motion to take from the table. Sorry, I'm working off of two computer screens, so very sorry here. Okay, this is a motion to take from the table, and this would be fiscal year 23-027 to rescind the borrowing authorization of $500,000 for the construction of a new library. This was placed on the table. We needed more information as indicated in our minute notes. At this point, I'm looking for a motion to take this off the table.
So
Point-
moved.
Point of order.
Yes,
Councilor Porgy, aren't we just recommending at this point? Wouldn't this be taken from the table by the full council, not from subcommittee?
this was not put on the table by the full council. This was, we passed over it, we postponed this since it did not have a recommendation coming out of council, and we felt that we needed more time. So to my best of my recollection, we're taking this from our table to have a discussion tonight to make a recommendation to go out to council.
Okay, gotcha.
They got a donation after that of $500,000, didn't it? So then, yeah, they can take it off the table then, right?
Excuse me. I don't know who that person was. Would you please mute? Okay, thank you. All right, so we're taking from the table the rescind borrowing authorization, $500,000 construction of the new library. The vote is to take off the table for our discussion and then recommendation. So may I have a motion, please?
I moved to take it from the table.
Move to take it from the table. Yes. Thank you.
Second. Healy.
Thank you. All in favor? I need discussion, first of all. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion is now taken from the table. It is open for discussion. We need to make a recommendation on this particular item. And again, this is just a recommendation that goes back out to council for tomorrow night's meeting. It is on that agenda as well. And so is there any discussion about rescinding the borrowing of $500,000 for the construction of the new library. Liz is here if we have any questions. This is just to rescind the borrowing, $500,000 of the borrowing on the new library. Councilor DeSorga.
I'd just like to say that the donors gave their money with the intent of reducing the borrowing on the library, and I'd like to thank them. I'm impressed with their generosity, and I heartily support rescinding the borrowing and look forward to another such order now that we received actually another 500,000. So it's great. Thank you to that library foundation.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion for this evening on this particular motion?
Mine would only be kind of a follow-up to that. Was we did table this at the full council. So would though we just took it from our smaller table tonight, our recommendation is not only going to be, are we making two separate recommendations? One, that we would take this from the table at the full council, and also what our recommendation is on the main motion itself?
Okay, we've just taken from the table in our meeting. We're discussing this now. Okay.
Right.
And in our discussion, we will make a recommendation.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is there's a recommendation to not, wouldn't that be a twofold thing that we would actually have to be recommending we take this off of the table at full council?
Yes, we would be.
And also what our recommendation is on the motion itself.
Yes, okay. Did we not vote on taking it from the table? I thought we did and opened it up for discussion.
No, we did
Okay.
tonight, but this is going to be the same. We're going to do the same thing tomorrow night. That we can recommend all we want tonight, but the full council still has to take this off the table tomorrow. Is that not correct? Because we tabled this at full council.
That is correct, yes. But we're voting a positive recommendation to take it off the table, and we'll forward that recommendation off to full council, and I assume they'll take it off the table tomorrow night.
And then also, are we putting in a recommendation on the motion itself?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's off the table. It's open for discussion. And as part of that discussion, do we want to make a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. Look, I'm dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's on
That's
this
all I was-
one. Believe
This
me.
was just
believe me.
logistics at that point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Is there any more comment? Are we all set? Can we vote? Okay. All in favor of I'm sorry. All in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we've taken this off the table and our recommendation to the council. Do you want to vote on that separately as well? Okay, so we will all agree we will come out of this committee tomorrow night with positive recommendation on this order. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is just confusing as this one. We're going to take from the table fiscal year 23-028, which is appropriate $500,000 from borrowing for construction of a new fire station. May I have a motion to take it from the table?
So move DeSorga.
Second, Healy.
Okay. It's been taken from the table. It's open for discussion. And as part of our discussion, do we want to make a recommendation? Who will start us off on this? Anybody?
I'm happy to go.
Okay, Councilor Sorga, thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for, I watched your meeting. That was, and I'm glad that we held it. Thank you very much. So I totally support the $500,000 needed for the fire station. I actually think that I believe that we all do. We just certified over 4 million in free cash, and I do not support borrowing money that we already have. I heard Liz talk about the 5-year plan and the upcoming capital expenditures. we may not all agree on the art decorations for the bridge that might go over Bank Row, or for things that are going to be Shattuck Park. But I think that this is probably the most important budget need that we have to fill. With interest rates on the rise, I don't support the borrowing. I appreciate that Liz is actually the only person who has conversations with the bond council. And I'm sure that she appreciates that we have conversations with the taxpayers. I noted in the order that it says the bond premium may be applied to reduce project costs and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed. First, I believe there's going to be a bond premium whether or not we borrow the extra 500,000. Secondly, note the word may in the financial order. I've spoken to Director Gilman about how we use our bond premiums. Historically, it has not been the practice of this city to use the bond premium from a project on that actual borrowing at all. It is our practice to use the bond premium for our next project, of which we have many. In 2010, the debt per capita here in Greenfield was $1,349. In 2022, the outstanding debt per capita is $3,242. Just 3 years ago, the average tax bill here was $4,172. 3 years later, the average tax bill is $4,938. That's a huge increase. We have the money. I believe, Councilor Forgy, if I'm not speaking out of turn, you asked for an order on the 27th because you had a meeting with, if that's not correct, for us to get an order either out of capital stabilization or from the free cash. And I've gladly come to a special meeting to vote for this money in entirety, as long as we're not borrowing it. I'll come to any meeting on any date. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Before I call on anybody else, I'd like to know if there are any counselors that wish to speak at this time on this particular motion. Okay, so I also want to mention to counselors this evening, I did invite David Singer, Butch Hawkins, and Chief Strand to join us this evening in this discussion and conversation. But so far, I see Liz's hand up. So if there are no counselors that want to speak.
I would like to hear what Liz has to say, because I'm of a different mind than Ginny on this one. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
First of all,
Go ahead, Liz.
First of all, I would just like to make a correction. Very purposely on all the fire station orders, we wrote in each order that the bond premium would be applied to the fire station debt. So that is not, it will be applied to the debt. Not maybe, it will be. Okay. You can look at each of the orders and you'll see that language is in there. So that will happen. Secondly, I would say that my thought, which I've explained, is there are a lot of needs. I have had recently a meeting with the school department, who will also be putting forward a lot of capital orders. I have just talked with DPW Director Marla Warner, and he has one that just came up. So in fact, it makes sense to put this with bond premium, which is generated over a 30-year time frame, than to not do something for DPW or the school, because we don't have enough in capital stabilization. And it also makes no sense for the city to borrow for smaller items or items that have a short life that you can only borrow them for. So for example, some things you can only borrow for 5 years. That's it. They could be expensive items, but you can only borrow them for 5 years. Guess what that impact is? It can be a lot. So it is more strategically important to have the money in capital stabilization for all these projects And secondly, the bond premium will pay off that 500,000. So there is not going to be any debt payment on that. So I just would take any further questions on that if you'd like.
Councilor DeSorga?
Would there be, thank you for clarifying that. I did see I do see the word may in it, but it's all right. I'm not going to quibble with that. Would there be a bond premium, Liz, regardless? Because we're borrowing a lot of money for that. I think 10,
Yes,
17. Yes, so there will be a
Yeah.
bond premium anyways. It's just,
for
am
sure.
I correct with that? Am I correct that this still would be a bond premium? It would just be
There
like.
still
if
will
you
be a
hold-
bond premium, but it would be automatically applied. I'll do an example. Okay, I'm just going to use round numbers. I'm just going to say 10 million.
Mhm.
Let's say we got bond premium. We went out to bid for 10 million and we got bond premium of 500,000. Then we will only be bonding and paying debt service on 9.5 million. That's how it works. So that's why I suggested this. Because it's kind of like stretching your money. I don't know. So you could do more with your money. So I'll say it again. I'm going to go out to bid and I'm going to say, I want to bond $10 million, and the people bid and they give you, it's competitive. It's a competitive bidding. So they give you extra premium to get the business. So I'm saying they're going to give me 500,000. So when I bond the 10 million, it'll reduce the principal of 10 million to 9.5.
All right, are there any questions,
I
comments?
have a question. I am learning the language of municipal finance here.
Yes,
Can you give me a definition for bond premium, please?
Well, I was
Just
trying to keep
briefly.
it like simple, like it's competitive and they want to give you more. So basically, the external market is higher. And so these companies are willing to pay because they, first of all, can write it off as an expense. And sometimes writing it off is better than the income tax rate. So that's why they do it, okay? So it's money given to the city outside of the outside of what you're financing. Okay. And so on the fire station project, we very specifically said it would reduce the debt. And Councilor DeSorger's right, on other orders, we wanted the flexibility of how to use bond premium. So sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. And this is one of the few times I believe it has been put forward as reducing. So it really is kind of like extra money that is given to the city when we bond.
Thank you.
Councilor Golub, does that answer?
I still have a lot
perhaps-
to learn, but that
Okay,
that
well-
brought me in the right direction. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, perhaps the easiest way is that it's competitive. Their municipalities are a good bet because they don't go bankrupt. So when people go out to borrow municipal bonds, boy, I don't have any command of the language tonight. They pay a premium to be able to bid, and they compete against one another, and whatever is over is considered a bond premium. That goes to the city, and the city can use it to settle a reduced debt, or it can hold it. It's really up to what it is, but it's the investors that are saying, we want this so much, we'll give you X number of dollars. Does that help?
Yes, it does help. I still have more to learn, but both of what you're sharing is yeah, helping.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, counselors? Do you have anything you'd like to add at this point?
I feel I'm I'm not wanting to take up too much space in my confusion here. But my understanding, and part of why I really, like I shared in the last meeting, I really have an aversion to unnecessary borrowing. And part of it is, okay, so we get this extra money in the bond premium, but when we borrow money, there's interest and that accumulates. And if that's not necessary to incur that extra expense,
So,
I don't see why we would do that.
Okay. Liz?
okay, I just want to make sure. So, Counselor Gulp, one of the things I deal with, the rating agencies, Standards and Poor and Moody's. And so what they like to see is a steady level of borrowing. And why? Why? Because it shows that you're taking care of things and not letting deferred maintenance build up. I also give the example often of a roof. You may not want to borrow, but if you did it right away, you might only be replacing the first layer of shingles. If you put it off, oh gosh, now you got to do another layer. And then if you totally put it off and you've destroyed some of the beam structure in your roof, wow, this whole project now costs more because I didn't want to borrow to replace the shingles in the beginning. So you have to look at it that way too. Escalation costs of labor, as well as increased costs on the project itself. It makes it worth it to borrow. Not, maintaining our policy, because the city has a policy of maintaining 8 to 10% debt service, general fund debt service of the operating budget. So there's parameters you stay in, but you also aren't going to ignore maintenance. And that's the reason why.
Thank you. Counselors, any more questions or discussion?
Can Councilor Healy say something?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead. I can't see him.
Sure. I can't raise my hand, so I'll just jump in when I need to. So I think the logic behind, using the borrowing for a big capital project like the fire station, which is over a 30-year term, makes sense. Being, in light of these other projects that are going to affect our future budget, making sure we have enough money in capital stabilization for those future projects is going to be really important. So I don't want to drain any money from capital stabilization. I'd rather take the free cash and dump it into capital stabilization just to save future 3 to 4 years. And my other concern is, most of our tax revenue comes from property tax, right? So right now, everybody knows property in Greenfield at a high, right? We're seeing unreal property prices in Greenfield. And my fear being, and this might be totally theory, is, we're going to see a 2009 where you have the property values drop, right? And then our tax revenue drops in the future because our houses are reassessed, right, at lower values because the market crash. And my gut tells me that's going to happen in the housing market soon, right? So it's kind of, I really see where Councilor Disorder's coming from, and I really respect that, but I also have bigger concerns down the road with these larger capital projects that might require that capital stabilization, and I hate to rob Peter to pay Paul, and we already had this money kind of allocated towards borrowing. I'd like to just see it roll over, and then the other $500,000 we're seeing from the donations, maybe we could just resend that borrowing, right? And not worry and call it a 50-50, deal and say, okay, yeah, we kept the $500,000 in borrowing, but the other 500 we don't want, right? And maybe come to some sort of agreement like that. But I'm really nervous about the next 3 years in Greenfield and what the tax rate's going to do, and property values decreasing and tax levy decreasing, right? So that's just my foresight.
Thank you. Um, we've heard from just about everyone. I just want to make sure I did invite David Singer and Butch Hawkins. I don't see the chief. Is there anything that you want to add at this particular junction? Either Butch or David?
Chris,
Go ahead. Thank you.
thank you. David Singer, co-chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. I'll just leave, I would like you to hear this idiom. This is one of the rare occasions where the city has the ability to have your cake and eat it too. Very unusual for this kind of a situation to arise. And I think it's prudent, actually, for the city council to follow the recommendations of Liz and the mayor. You have a lot of positive factors here. You have $1 million coming from the Library Foundation. You could also, the mayor could submit an order and reduce that borrowing by another 500,000. So that'll take care of any of the first concerns that were discussed. By voting both of these, this is a rare time where you're not changing the debt amount. Plus, you're going by borrowing the money, you're going to add $500,000 to your stabilization fund. Whereas if you spend it, I don't see how the keeping the borrowing, not borrowing is as helpful as having the 500,000 of stabilization. For the fire station purposes, we need this money ASAP. Every month now that the temporary fire station sits on the city property costs us $45,000 to $50,000. So if we have this money now, today, tomorrow, then we can go out and order the things we need from FF&E, and there's a really good chance that we'll get them at parallel to constructing the fire station, which means that will be within the time frame that we set up, knowing already that we're going to be past that point. So every month we delay is that's a lot of money. That's real money. We don't know we don't know what we're going to miss, what we're going to pay in addition for the borrowing, but that's real money. And then what Liz said about the bond premium, I didn't even know that, but that's certainly an added factor. I hear what others have said and about taxpayers, but I really, from what I've learned from Liz, being the co-chair of the committee and being on the city council, I see little taxpayer downside doing things this way. It just will not increase, keeping the debt the same will not change a tax bill, but keeping $500,000, but putting $500,000 in stabilization will dramatically help the taxpayer. So I'll end with that. The fire station really needs the money as soon as possible. This is an excellent way of going forward. Catherine, if you need, if you have questions of me, from my experience, I'm happy to answer them, but in your personal life, you do not want to borrow a lot of money, but in a municipal life, you want to borrow money for certain things. And this is one of those things that you want to borrow money for, especially when you can put that $500,000 into the bank at the same time. Those situations don't arise very often. So thank you very much for letting me speak. I hope you will both give a unanimous positive recommendation tonight, and that you will that 9 councils will vote tomorrow night to give the $500,000 to the fire station so that we can move on. Thank you.
Butch, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I would just like to echo what David said in reference to the mechanics of the finance and borrowing and how it plays in. In addition to that, I just would like to point out that there are items that part of this 500,000 would go to pay for that are front-end costs when the project is being initiated now. That if we waited and didn't have the money until the end of the project, trying to fit those items in and make them work, it's going to cost us a lot more money. Plus, down the road, if we're ordering those particular items, which I can certainly have the OPM and the fire chief send you a list of what those items are going in. Off the top of my head, I don't have them tonight, but that was a pivotal piece and for us seeking the additional money as well. So I would just like to, make you in the Ways and Means Committee members aware of that piece as well. And I too hope you that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to add additional comments?
I just had a slight one, Councilor Forgy.
Go right ahead. Go ahead, Councilor Toronto.
I think part of what the hang up would be, obviously as a taxpayer is I think as David said, and I think Liz had touched on earlier, the differences between, I hear from folks like, well, you know, you wouldn't want to put this money, you wouldn't want to borrow this money if you didn't have it, kind of thing, or you wouldn't, you know, what, concerned about interest rates, concerned about things like that. And there's other factors when it comes to the municipal spending that a person doesn't deal with on an individual basis. I think that's the important part of this, is these aren't easy ideas or terms to wrap your head around if you're not involved in it. And so I think it is important to listen to the recommendation, and in that end, kind of like Councilor Healy said, it makes sense for this kind of project, this large scale project, when you're essentially getting this back. It's not something you do every day. It's not something you do on every project, but I think that this particular instance, it's not as cut and dried as just if I'm trying to, you know, borrow some money to do a small project at my house or something like that, and worrying about just all of the simple things of you know, bank interest rates. And because you don't have bond premiums when you're getting a contractor to do your own, you know, personal roof. They're not doing competitive marketing to try to get that. So I mean, if I put out a bid to some contractors to do my roof, and someone said, hey, I want to give you this much extra, you know, that'd be great, but that's just not how it works on a personal finance level versus municipal. And I think that sometimes that becomes the confusing part overall. And I mean, I'm not going to say that I understand it wholeheartedly at all, because I'm somewhere in the middle of that with what I do. But for me, this makes sense, even though it on paper might not sound that way.
Okay, thank you. I do see Chief Strand here with us this evening. Hi, Chief. I see your hand up. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hi, I don't. First of all, I want to say thank you for the continued support for the project. It's difficult for me to make a comment on this because, you know, I trust Liz, and I think Liz is going to put a good plan forward. One of the things that I am concerned about is there are multiple expenditures coming up that don't fall within the large 30-year capital process, if you will, including projects for the firehouse, or the fire department, I should say, but more specifically the DPW and some other projects that have already been pushed off multiple years in the capital program because we just didn't have the funding to do a lot of the projects. And that list is getting longer and longer. And I will tell you from my experience that it took a lot of creativity to get us back on track for years of pushing all the apparatus down the road and down the road and down the road. And I think that potentially could happen, you know, and it may not sound like a lot, but 500,000 is a paving of a road or something like that. And then would you be in the position to actually borrow the money down the road at a higher rate versus the city has already authorized this borrowing, and it's going to be reduced by, I think, $1 million now instead of the 500,000. We're just looking to repurpose part of the borrowing so we're not affecting other projects or other complications that the city have within the next 2 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, that was Interesting discussion. I'm glad everybody participated in it. I thank all the parties for being here this evening. I would like us now to make a recommendation that goes out, that we make a recommendation for tomorrow evening, that when council takes it off the table, we have a recommendation coming out of Ways and Means. Before we take that vote up, I would like to say a couple of things. First of all, this vote is going to take a 2/3 vote to pass on council floor, which means that there has to be 9 positive votes for this to go forward. The second thing I want to say is that this is a really, in my opinion, a philosophical discussion between 2 different ways in which people handle finances and think about finances. I think both have merit. It's a difficult decision for me to make as well. My finance background tells me borrowing is fine. What I'm hearing from other individuals saying we should pay as we go, I can respect that also as well. I think the bottom line for this committee and for the council is to get this funding to the fire station as quickly as possible, by whatever means. But this evening, we have to take a stand, and we have to make a start and get it out to council for a bigger discussion for tomorrow evening. So at this point, we have taken from the table to appropriate $500,000 from borrowing for construction of a new fire station. And I'd like to have a recommendation on this. So all those with a positive recommendation on the borrowing, please indicate by raising your hands and saying aye, so I can hear you as well as see you. Okay, all those in favor of the borrowing going through, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, I have 3 in favor. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I have 2 opposed. No abstentions then. I'm going to thank the committee for the hard work in doing this. This goes out tomorrow evening with a split recommendation to council. Thank you all very much for your input and your thoughtfulness on this one. We're going to move along. Our next motion is to repurpose $3,585,000 from anaerobic digester authorization to a sludge dewatering project. We had a first reading on it, I believe, at last month's meeting. So I'd like to open discussion on this since it's on the table already. We don't have to take it, and we should open the discussion. Is there anybody who wants to weigh in on this particular item? We do have Councilor Warner here, Councilor Warner. We do have Director Warner here. I know you feel like a counselor. We feel like you're part of us as well. And if anybody's got any questions for him, do people understand what this is all about? Would you like him to briefly remind us of what we are talking about at this point? Okay. Director Warner, please.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I guess my calling after I retire is to be a city councilor. So
good. And we're all looking forward to that moment.
So I know I sent out a lot of information. There may be a lot of questions on it. There may not. I think, first of all, it's a 2 or 3 piece project as opposed to the digester. We'll start with the dewatering project, and if anyone has any questions on the digester, I think I put the information in my memo of how we landed here. So we have an upstairs at the wastewater treatment plant that has a lot of very old machinery up there that used to handle our sludge. I sent quite a few pictures with the documents. So there's a lot of demolition. All that equipment has to be removed. We removed a great deal of it in-house already to save some money to make room for a future project like this. So the project includes demo, rewiring of the upstairs, which the wiring goes back to the mid-80s. And I also sent a picture along. Part of the construction is to demo the outside lean-to. You see a tanker underneath a lean-to. That was determined that it would not hold conveyor systems and any kind of weight heating systems for the new dewatering system to be installed. So that's going to have to be demoed. And then a small steel building will be put in place in the approximate same area. So it's a multiple projects. It's multiple faceted project. There's construction, there's building, there's adding new infrastructure to handle our sludge. So there will be a new steel building put on the outside so that we can have climate control. The byproduct, the biosolids, or I should say the cake in my memo, once we press the water out, needs to be fairly, kept at a certain degree in the building so that when it's hauled away, it won't be frozen in the either dump trailer or dumpsters. So a little background. In 2016, we paid $168,000 and some change to haul our sludge to Montague from Greenfield. We haul between 36,000 and 36 to 45,000 gallons a week out of our wastewater treatment plant, which is about 95% water. So as time went on, the last 10 years or so, we have lost places to bring our sludge. There's been a lot of talk about PFAs, PFOs, testing of those compounds in our wastewater. And eventually all our places that we could haul this to dropped off to one functioning plant that will take our sludge. That's Lowell. So approximately 95% of every load that goes out of Greenfield is water, and we're hauling it to Lowell. And we're paying the fuel fees. We're projected to be over 700,000 this year, and 95% of what we're hauling is water in our sludge. The reason it's watered down is we can't have too thick a sludge, too thick a biosolids bringing it to Lowell. It puts too much torque, and it actually hurts their equipment there in order for them to process it. So we went in a different direction. This press project will install a press. I sent a little video. It's very short. I got a bunch of them. We ran a load of our sludge up to a plant in Hoosick, New Hampshire, and we pressed out 95% of our load of the water. That was all the water coming out of our load in that video that we're paying to be hauled to Lowell. So once this project is in place, if it's approved, we're talking about taking a tractor trailer, a 24-foot tractor trailer out of our plant every 2.5 weeks to be hauled to a landfill. So that is going to greatly reduce our costs, mostly in fuel costs and disposal of our current sludge. Needless to say, it's going to be a very big shot in the arm of reducing our carbon footprint, or Greenfield adding to the carbon footprint all the way to Lowell 5 times a week with 9,000 gallons. So the other, once this project's in place, we didn't fast forward to what we call a dryer of our biosolids or our cake, as this is a pretty expensive project to upgrade our building at the same time, which needs to be done down at the wastewater treatment plant. Eventually, we'd like to put a dryer in place as the PFAs, PFOs. I can spell that out for you in a few minutes, but it's a very long word. But it's chemicals that in our drinking water, they're doing away with them. We're testing for them regularly. Our drinking water is fine, but there's regulations coming down to take them out of our wastewater. So we have, the good news is we have fairly clean biosolids when it comes to these compounds that's going to be regulated out of the biosolids. So we may have the opportunity to add a dryer, and the design of the press is going to allow us to add a dryer later to actually dry the biosolids and literally make fertilizer out of it. And it will be classified as A, B, or C, I think we're gonna land at class A or B, which can go on front lawns and can be distributed throughout the land. But that's the phase 2 of the project. But this is the nuts and bolts phase 1 here of the dewatering project. So that was kind of a broad overview. And if there's any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Director Warner. Councilor Sorga, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I did. When would you anticipate that we would start on this?
So this, being that it's over $1 million and there's building involved, it falls under chapter 149 and 30B for procurement, so it takes a little longer. We anticipate we need to hire an OPM because of the amount of the dollars involved in the project, and then engineering and design. My expectations are 7 to 10 months to have this thing up and running.
And may I follow up, Councilor Forgy?
Sure, please.
And the dryer, is that something that you're anticipating for like a year from now or 2 years from now?
So the dryers we're still studying. They're not real common, or not as common in the United States as they are in Europe. And there's many different dryers out there. Before I would want to install a dryer, I want to make sure that we got some data on these things and how efficient they are, repair costs, capital costs, so on and so forth. And I think the big thing, the reason why I pumped the brakes on the dryer right now, I'd like to be the first one in the area to have one, is the PFA, PFO regulations that's still hanging out there with EPA and DEP. I wouldn't want to invest in not to hold me to this number, another $2 million in a great project like that, and then turn around and tell me I can't use my dried sludge for land use because it breaks the threshold of PFAs, PFOs. So that's the only reason I'm pumping the brakes on that phase of the project. Otherwise, I would have given you one big project tonight.
Are
I have
there
a
any
question
more?
on this financing, but I'll save that
Go-
for after.
No, are there other counselors right now that have questions for Director Warner?
Counselor Healy.
Please go ahead.
So Director Warner, so in the dewatering phase, the excess water that you're going to be pumping out, is that water we have to treat since we're not drying it? What's the process there?
So the water that's pressed out gets recirculated right back through the plant. And obviously it dilutes what other water is coming into the plant. I don't believe, everything I've read, it's going to cost us more money to retreat the water. We're just pressing the water out and sending it back through the system.
Okay, so the chemical cost for additional treatment, it's like, because you're diluting it, it's not really a factor. I'd just like to look at it from that perspective too.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the sludge, when it gets to the point where it's already been treated. So technically the water that's being sent back through the system is treated. In fact, we could probably reduce the chlorine and other chemicals before we discharge.
Okay, and we have the capacity to treat that extra gallons per hour, whatever it may be, in the plant right now, or we're not going to end up discharging to the Connecticut River for overflow. That's my only concern right now, the extra water.
I think that's a great question. It actually leads to some news that I haven't shared yet, actually with anyone. We're beginning to see some very good numbers drop in our I&I. It's a very big accomplishment. We're working on the I&I, so no problem with the capacity at this point in time. 2 years ago, I would not even attempted this project because of the water being run back through the system with our I&I.
Perfect. That's great news. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Councilor Sorga, I believe you had another question.
Yes, that was a great question about the water. I hadn't thought of that. What happened to the extra water? So I have a question for Director Gilman. I don't know that I've seen that before. What we appropriated for that. Actually, I don't think I was on council then.
Right.
But it's $500,000 less. And just could you explain that? I think it had to do with the sale of the van, but could you explain that, please?
I can explain it two different ways. In the memo I had sent, I talked about arbitrage. So there's laws with municipal borrowing, and one of them is arbitrage. When this project started out, it was an anaerobic digester. And we had full intention of going forward. So we borrowed the money. When we sent it out to bid, it came back at over $7 million. And we said, we're not doing this. Whoa, hold off, wait. So what happened was we ended up paying back the money we borrowed. And now we're no longer allowed to borrow against that. And that's because we get such low rates that they have laws to prevent arbitrage, borrowing, not that we were doing that, but borrowing money and then investing in making money. So when you do that, when you borrow something and pay it off fully as a ban, which is a short-term loan, they no longer allow you to borrow against that. I also kind of, another way I thought of it is if you went into the bank and you borrowed 50,000 and you had this coupon for 0% or 1% financing, and you left the bank and you said, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. And you go back in and you give them back the 50,000. Okay. You can't use that coupon again because it was a one-time only. So it's sort of like that. You can't, because we didn't spend it, we can't use it again. And so it reduced the amount that's available for long-term and short-term borrowing. And it's just the laws. It's
Okay,
what
thank you.
we have to deal with. No one expected it to come in at over $7 million, believe me. Yeah.
Director Warner.
Yes, and so from another direction of how this happened with this project, with the process, and this is to Ginny, I hope this is helpful. So when we went in, we hired the OPM, we came to an agreement on a cost, and then it was going to cost approximately for the OPM and design, engineering and design, $500,000. So I work with Kelly every June or July, I believe it is, and I let her know on all our capital what we'll be spending that year on a capital project, whether it's all of it to borrow or a portion of it. So I gave Kelly the $500,000 figure. That's what we anticipated for engineering and design and OPM services in that first year. So we ended up pulling the plug on the project when we thought it was $7 million, but we had to pay the OPM. It was CMS, Construction Management Services, $15,000 for what they had invested in the services for us to get to engineering and design. So as Liz explained, we did not use the 500,000. So we lost it because I had Kelly bond it or band it, however we want to say that. So that's how it applied to this project. I lost it because I didn't use it. We pulled the plug on the project, if that helps. We lost the borrowing on that, excuse me. We didn't lose $500,000.
Right, you lost the authorization.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has any questions right now? Okay, we need to make, oh, please go ahead. Hello?
Your hand in that picture.
Councilor Toronto, did you want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. It was silly, but I just wanted to ask if we knew who volunteered their hand in that picture with the press sludge. That was all.
Which picture was that?
It's in the presentation.
Somebody's hand is
Oh,
there?
God.
Okay.
I didn't submit that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, moving right along. Okay, we have to make a recommendation at this point. So our recommendation, this is to repurpose $3,585,000 for anaerobic digester authorization to a sludge dewatering project. Who is all in favor, please? Aye.
Hey,
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's a unanimous positive recommendation. Thank you, everyone. The next item on this agenda, we've already sent that out to council floor. They had to hold it because they didn't have enough people, because it's going to take a supermajority vote, I believe, because it's a prior year expense. So that's off of our agenda at this point. It is on with the council. Full council. Acceptance of the city's quarterly grant list, including current and pending grants to the city of Greenfield. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of money, and it's amazing where all of these grants come from. So let's open up the discussion, and we're going to have to make a recommendation out to council on this one. Councilor DeSorger.
So I have a question about this. I've been on council for 3 years, and I talked to somebody that was on 6. This is the first time I've ever seen a quarterly grant list. So
Correct.
my first question is, why is, I have actually several, but why is that? And why are we involved in that?
Liz.
Okay, I just want to make sure you want me.
Yes.
Well, if you recall, over the summer, there was a lot of questions, and it was requested that you start getting reports. So I was actually going to ask if you like this or you wanted different information on it. So yes, we've started this because it is a lot of money, and there were questions about grants that we received through the summer. And so we started doing this.
Great.
Councilor Sorger, just go right ahead.
So, okay, so it was $37 million worth of grants, okay? And I of course, I read through them, but there was a couple of things that I didn't even know were happening. So, and I thought, how did we pick the, what did it say? We awarded a consultant $250,000 for the site readiness at the I-91 Industrial Park expansion. What happened there? Who was awarded? What did they do? When did that happen? That's one. Do you know anything? Does anybody know anything about that?
I believe that was Marlo might. However, I believe that was Director Adams. So she would need to speak to the specifics of what the overall project is.
I see the mayor's hand up.
Okay. Oh, the mayor and the mayor's here too. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll call on the mayor. Thank you.
I don't have that list in front of me, but I think I know to which she is referring. We have a significant grant from I always get this a little, we have Mass Works and we have Mass Development. I believe at the industrial parks, it's Mass Works. And there's a certain amount of acreage at the industrial park that we are seeking to expand. And that, if I'm not mistaken, I should call up the list, and if you'll give me a few minutes and a little while, I might come back. But if I'm not mistaken, that's what that is. If you would give me, if you have it in front of you, Counselor DeSorger, what is the year on that? It could be, it would be a couple of years old.
Right, it was.
My guess is that's what it's referring to, and that work, mass development, right? That's all. That's what it is. And they were kind enough to invest in Greenfield, as they continue to do, because they want us to be able to expand the industrial park. It has hit a bit of a snag, and I don't recall off the top of my head why, but just know that when we get these grants, some of them have time frames by which they have to be spent, and therefore we comply based on whatever the project is. Others can go on for a while, and this is one, and they can go on for a while because we are allowed to ask for extensions. They can go on for a while because there was no specific time frame involved. It might be because they understand that these are complicated projects. It might, it varies with grants. I think the thing that, as Liz pointed out, it was discussed much earlier in the summer. Somebody asked if we could get, and I honestly don't remember who it was, if we could get a regular, no one said quarterly, we just figured that was the best way to do it, a regular reporting of the grants coming into the city and what the status they were. And so took us a while to get all that together, but how it comes about is we'll routinely ask each department to let us know what grants they have in place and outstanding or pending. And that is how we compile the list. And as you can see, $37 million is a lot of money. And that is basically, depending on the granting authority, that is your tax dollars coming back to you in ways that are not on your tax rolls. And lots of good projects can be done as a result of that.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anybody else have any questions? Councilor DeSorger, does that answer your questions?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. So we want to make a record.
I have a question.
Oh,
This is
sorry, Catherine, can't see you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say thank you. I hear the response to the request to have these grants, and I have a question that feels kind of difficult to ask. I don't want to do anything to. This is a lot of really good projects and good money, and I don't want to throw a wrench in that. But I do have a concern. I think this would be a question to the mayor. And that is, if we've spoken to council about whether we are in compliance with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I have a report, and I could share it with you if you'd like, from the Congressional Research Service regarding federal financial assistance and civil rights requirements. And part of it, just a couple sentences from it, it states that 4 civil rights statutes condition the receipt of federal financial assistance on recipients' compliance with the mandate not to discriminate in federally funded programs or activities. And one of those 4 civil rights statutes is Title VI, I think, of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on the ground of race, color, and national origin. And I could keep reading, but given the recent racial discrimination lawsuit and the findings in that case, I'm wondering if we are clear whether we are in compliance with the Civil Rights Act.
Liz, I think I saw your hand up. Did you want to speak to this? You're muted.
You're muted, Liz.
Specifically, I wanted to say that every single year we have what's known as a single audit. And that is of all your federal grants. And compliance is looked at that point. And yes, when we receive federal grants and state grants, you sign what's known as letter of assurances that says you comply with this, this, and this. And so it is looked at. I think that, you know, I think it's a good question, but I don't think it rises to the threshold of saying overall the city does not comply, I guess is my point. Mayor wanted to speak.
I was just going to kind of echo the same thing that
Okay.
Liz Gilman said. But when we receive a grant, there are different conditions. That is definitely always one of them. Paperwork is voluminous in many of them, but we always comply, whether it's Davis-Bacon, the Civil Rights, that's prevailing wage, Civil Rights Act. Yes, I think the answer is yes, and I think you would see that you would see that happening with each one of these grants. CDBG is another one where we are required to work with people from low to middle income. There's a lot of CDBG requirements. It depends on the grant often as to what we are asked to comply with, but certainly at the federal level and generally at the state level, those requirements are met. At least to my knowledge. Some of those grants have been there for a while.
And to piggyback on that, let's pretend we weren't. You would get a letter of non-compliance on which you need to respond and correct things. It's not like they just cut you off. So, and that sometimes will show up in your single audit that you need to correct something, not something like that, but sometimes there's things they'd like you to tighten up or change a bit on federal grants, and you would find that in your single audit. And believe it or not, they follow up on that. They want to say, they want to see like a year later, they'll follow up on that.
And which, oh, sorry.
No,
I have a few follow-up.
Councilor Golub, do you have a follow-up? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do, thank you. So in which agency are you needing to file the documents with?
Federal Clearinghouse.
Okay. And
We have
when?
to upload our audits annually.
Okay. And when does the single audit take place?
During our outside auditors do it. So they do our regular financial statements. And because we receive so much federal money, we have to do it every year. So it generally is somewhere depending on what's going on in the world, like COVID. It's generally between January and March. We complete all the work. The goal is to have the final financial statements in March. And then part of that process for the single audit, as Director Adams can tell you, every single year I need to give it to her, because not only do I upload it to the Federal Clearinghouse, Director Adams has to upload it to the CDBG program. So they can make sure as well that we're in compliance.
Okay. And I totally believe that you file the paperwork and did that last year. The information that we have now since the court case is different. And I'm wondering, and I hear you both offering opinions on it and also saying this is a good question. And I'm wondering if there's been any consultation with council in preparation for the next single audit, given the court case. and the findings of the court. And if you would be
Counselor-
willing to do that.
Well, I will tell you that as very good auditors that they are, our outside auditors, they always ask and research any legal issues that arose during the year. So that's part of the questions of your audit.
So they'll be asking those questions.
They most certainly will. And they read through minutes and they read through all the council meetings. Like we have to provide them with all that information.
Thank
And
you.
the audit also is, it will be the 22 audit. It'll be a 22 fiscal year.
Yes, it lags. Well, you have to close the year before you
Mhm.
have the audit, but we're close. They're coming in January this year, just so you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. We have to move along on this, really, at this point. The question is, are we willing to make a recommendation that we accept the quarterly listings of grants? So is everybody in agreement that we should make a positive recommendation out to council that we accept this quarterly listing, and it's our expectation that we will continue to receive this? If everyone's in favor of that, would you indicate by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm going to abstain as well.
okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, we're going to enter under discussion. We now have a lot of money. Remember all that money that came in free cash? Now it's up to the mayor to make recommendations to the council on where she wants to see that free cash spent and allocated. And so we have a number of discussions right now. In the short version of it, we're going to go through it right now. We have a motion to appropriate $2,500,000 from free cash to Capital Stabilization Fund 8402. Is there any discussion on this or any recommendation that anybody wants to make on this?
I think it's a great idea myself. I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand.
No, that's okay. I can't see you
should be
anyway. The screen is
replenishing
only,
everything that
it's
we
only,
took out.
only so wide, right? Only so wide. Okay,
We're going to be putting it back in with an extra 500,000. So I think it's fabulous.
okay. Any other comments on it? Okay, are we all in agreement that we approve of this request to put $2,500,000 into capital stabilization? Everybody who is in favor of doing that, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. The motion passes. The recommendation will be unanimous. There's no motion. The recommendation will be unanimous. Appropriate $200,000 from free cash to compensated absences fund. The backup information and detail in all of this is included in your packet, right? At this point, I hope you've read through that. Has anybody got any comment or disagreement with doing this? Is there anybody who needs an explanation? Councilor DeSorga?
So $200,000 for compensated absences is
Yes.
a 300% increase. Last year we put in 50,000. The year before we put in 25. And I just wanted to point out that this money goes into a fund that is not subject to any appropriation. I couldn't find anywhere. I did find a policy on the state website, but we have no policy into who gets what. And looking at the list, there were some departments that didn't receive any allocation from compensated absences, and I'm sure they all had people leaving, but like the schools or DPW. And I think without us having a good policy on it, I couldn't be in favor of that huge increase. I did see that there were people that were retiring, but we also got a list of how it was all expended. And there were other years when there were hefty retirements. So that's my thought.
Is there are there other comments from counselors? Okay, so I'll join in if I could for a moment. There's an expectation, that is what the memo that we received said, there's an expectation that there is going to be an increase this year, probably due to some retirements, some layoffs. The pieces that are being compensated, I think, as you know, and everything else, are for unpaid vacation time and other employee benefits that come per the contract. It's often hard to know how many of these requests you're going to get in any given fiscal year. So my opinion is that we did see what happened last year in compensated absences. And I think it's always good to have a reserve fund, because many times people are, department heads can't pick this expense up. Years ago, and I'm going way back in the time machine, years ago, there were, things were a little bit different, and contracts did not contain as many benefits. And so years ago, there was not so much need. It was considered that you could take a bottom line from your individual departments. But now, with all the contracts and the allocations and the things that are negotiated for, it makes sense to me to increase it. Even that seems like a high amount. I'm just betting on a rainy day, because I do think there will be some need for it here in the second half of this fiscal year. That's my opinion. Are there any other counselors that want to?
I would just,
speak right up, because I can't see everybody.
I'm going to kind of, I guess, echo both of you in one part or the other. While normally I don't think that I would be in agreement with this large of an increase, I will, with my tongue in cheek, say there might be a need for that coming up, and I would hope that there would be.
Okay. If I may, Liz, if I can ask you a question, please. If the amount in the compensated absences fund was too high, could a recommendation be made to transfer to another stabilization fund?
I don't believe so. I just want to point out that there is a policy. We actually try to guard it and only use it when necessary. So departments who have more flexibility within their budgets often can cover it, but then sometimes even the bigger budget departments cannot. And there really isn't any historical rationale. People leave when they leave. And so I think you all realize the status of the public safety budgets. So you should realize that there could be some big buybacks.
Thank you. Councilor DeSorga, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
I couldn't, Liz, I'm sure that there is. I looked very hard to see the policy about who got what. It was the fact that it's, once we put it in there, it's not subject to any appropriation. And it was.
But it can only be used for buybacks. And that's my job, the city accountant's job, the treasurer's job, the auditor's job. So it can only be used for sick buybacks, vacation buybacks. Sometimes people have a little bit of personal time. And again, sometimes it's people retire. We had one smaller department where 2 people left June 30th and gave 2 weeks notice and left. how are you going to recover that in your budget? You aren't.
No.
So it does vary from year to year. And some of the people who've been here a long time get what's known as a sick buyback, which is generally 20% of their accumulated sick time at their current rate. And when those individuals retire, it's a substantial amount of money.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, we will make a recommendation on this. Okay, so all those in favor of voting the $200,000 into compensated absences, into a stabilization fund for compensated absences, would you please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Aye.
Okay. And abstentions? Okay, I'm sorry, Counselor Golub, were you opposed?
I am.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is to appropriate $200,000 from free cash to Contract Stabilization Fund 8403. As many of you are aware, because we have gotten quite a few emails, we know that the teachers are in contract negotiation, and we've heard from GEA again with their contract requests that are ongoing. It makes good sense to me to put this in contract stabilization. We do want to be able to settle contracts. We do want to be able to bargain in good faith. If anybody's got any questions or concern, could you share those with us now?
I do.
Councilor Sorga, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna vote in favor of the 200,000, and I was gonna say this with the last one, but I didn't want to mix up the two issues. I have a big concern that we're not putting enough into this fund.
Okay.
So a year that we put 25,000 into compensated absences, we put 300,000 into contractual stabilization. Our biggest departments are in the midst of negotiations, and there's 170 teachers that are without a contract for over a year. And I think DPW is up in June, which is another, they have, what, 70 in a union. Everyone on this call knows what's happening with the cost of living. We all go to the grocery store and the gas station. And it's, I had a hard time with those two orders because I felt like one of them should be a little less and one should be more. And I didn't want to say that on the last go round. It's why I didn't vote for the 200,000. I think that with all that we had, the cost of living for people, for the average ordinary citizen has gone up so much that I am going to vote in favor of this. But I think that I've heard we've lost some fabulous teachers to Pioneer. I think we haven't been able to hire people into DPW because of our wage scale. And I think that's planning for the future. It's just my opinion for what it's worth. I'm going to vote in favor of it. That's why I didn't vote for the 200. One of the reasons.
Thank you. And that makes sense. And I hope you will speak to that on council floor tomorrow evening. Anybody else? Again, I can't see.
Yeah,
So
Chris,
go right
I
ahead.
was going to echo some, like, I agree with Ginny on that aspect of it, that I would like to see more of it go to this, this contract stabilization. I will just say, however, I guess this one seems more proactive, like she's saying, on being more competitive in salaries and things like that. Whereas I think the other one is we're still fulfilling a contractual obligation on how we're paying for it, because part of the contract is that you are going to get paid out for your time when you do retire or leave. And so though this one may feel better on the front, we do have to cover our back end as well, I think. And though it just may not be as tasty seeming when we're when we're putting it out there, but you know, as I think was expressed, sometimes the departments can cover it all themselves, and sometimes they need a little bit of assistance from another area. And I think that both of these, I think, go hand in hand with covering our obligations when we have employees.
Thank you, Councilor Toronto. Any other councilors?
I do want to add, I wish
Okay.
that we could reappropriate that almost like even between these two funds, but if we can't, we can't, and that's fine.
Can't.
Yeah,
Right at the moment, we can't. So, again, we can always amend. Everybody can always amend downward, but you can't increase upward. So, okay. So everybody up. If you're in favor of the $200,000 from free cash to go to contract stabilization, please indicate aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. The next one is $100,000 from free cash to general stabilization fund 8400. Has anybody got any questions or concerns about this? Okay, that's our savings. That's our kind of our savings account.
This doesn't make sense to me because we haven't yet voted on the audit. And so it doesn't make sense to me that we would move on this while the audit is still on the table.
Right, well, let me just put it this way. The audit is not, in my opinion, the way I'm looking at it, is not material to this request. The request is for $100,000 to go from free cash to general stabilization. Part of the rationale was that if the audit passes, they can keep the, they'll take it from from general stabilization and keep that amount of money right now that's in the account level. If it fails, it just adds another $100,000 to general stabilization. And that's the way I look at it. So it is one explanation that was offered, okay? But I think that the request is to add $100,000 to general stabilization.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go right ahead.
Because I don't have the general fund whole in front of me, and that right now it says the balance is 3.44%, and DOR recommends 3 to 5. What, top of your head, maybe, Liz, what increase to that 3.44% would another 100 grand be? I don't imagine it would be.
It's not a huge amount.
I would imagine half of it.
You just want to show going forward, even if it's baby steps.
I know there's a lot of those ranges that
I can do it.
the powers that be want you to fall in between for whatever reason they decided. I was assuming this wasn't going to put us over 5.
No, absolutely not.
Right, that's why I didn't think so. Okay.
I'm gonna.
Catherine, you're looking a little confused. And so I'm wondering if by way of explanation, the request is to put $100,000 in general stabilization. There's another request for $100,000 for the audit to be taken out of stabilization. So I would look at this would be, the way I would look at it is, they're not asking to fund the audit, okay? They're asking just to add $100,000 to the stabilization fund.
Thank you, Councilor Forgy. Thank you for reading my face. I'll ask a question, and that is, it seems that makes sense to me. And I think that it would make sense to table this. And so until we know what happens with the audit, and I'm contemplating whether to make a motion to table. Making motions is a new thing to me. So I think that that's what I would like to do, but that's what was on my face. I think I would
Okay,
like to
so,
table it.
Can I
okay,
interject?
so right now, then that's, and here's, okay, so here's two scenarios to think about at this point. We are recommending out to council for tomorrow night's meeting. And also, so if you make a motion to table, the table would be in committee. Okay, so it would be in Ways and Means to table. If it gets out from, if we have a recommendation to make to council tomorrow evening, you can also make a motion at that time to table. Just something to confuse you even more.
I appreciate that.
So,
Okay,
I hear, and I think it makes sense to me to table here, but I hear Councillor Healy having something.
well, Councilor
Thank
Healy,
you, thank
please.
you, Councillor Forgy.
I think I can make this really simple. So, the grand scheme, we're adding this money to general stabilization, right? Which is important to build that stability in our city, right? So any money we want to move out of general stabilization later, correct me if I'm wrong, would require a council vote anyways.
Correct.
So even if we move this money in there, they can't take it to spend it on something else without our approval. Does that help?
That does help. I'm still thinking it through, but thank you.
Okay, so if our another counselor, is another counselor? I'm sorry, I'm looking for you all. Liz, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to answer Councillor Terrazzo. I plugged it in. It goes from 3.4 to 3.6 on the stabilization.
I figured it wasn't gonna go up. So
Okay.
I
Thank
don't
you.
remember which ones are, it's hard to keep track of which ones are which all the time. Going in, this is a majority vote. When we
Correct.
pull from capital, is that at 2/3?
Correct.
Okay.
Any
So we would have even that
stabilization.
extra protection in this, so to speak, of pulling it
Well,
back.
yeah, people have to be in agreement.
So I don't know if that's helpful for the purpose of this discussion as well. So I was just getting it for my own clarification, and I don't know, it might be helpful too.
Thank you. Okay, so we still have a recommendation to make on the $100,000 from free cash going to General Stabilization Fund 8400. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of positive recommendation for the $100,000, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that goes out with a positive recommendation of $100,000 to go into free cash. Next on the agenda is $600,000 from free cash to reduce the fiscal year 2023 tax rate. Is there discussion on this? It was spoken about, it has been spoken about in other meetings. And we also got backup material that indicates that the certification of the tax rate happened before the $600,000 was brought to the attention of Liz and the mayor. And I think that the feeling is, and I don't know if it's the law, but I would assume that it's pretty close to the law, that what we want to have happen in Greenfield and what they want to have happen in Greenfield is that $600,000, which did not make it into the tax calculation, should now be used to reduce the 2023 tax rate. Is anybody opposed to reducing the current tax rate? Okay. Is there a positive recommendation coming out of Ways and Means for tomorrow night's meeting? So if you want to so indicate, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Because I
Okay,
did have one quick question on this with the
Sure.
backup. It was saying that we need 2 city council meetings to accomplish this. Does that mean we're needing, does this count as one of those 2? Or is this,
It counts
are we
as
gonna have-
one. We still, this is, yeah, we still have another. And we need to do it before the tax rate is set.
does that mean, so this one count, like I'm saying tomorrow counts as 1?
Yes.
That's
So we're gonna
correct.
have to have a special meeting in October?
Well, we haven't
is-
even discussed the split tax rate yet, so I'm
In
assuming
November.
that's gonna come up. Well, it can't be December. We
No,
have
it
to,
has to be November.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I just
Right,
didn't know, because this memo said the city will need 2 city council meetings in October to accomplish this.
Yeah, we were hoping to have those meetings sooner, but they haven't happened. We
Okay.
wanted to have everything set in November for the tax rate. It's
Okay.
looking like it's gonna push into December. Because there hasn't been any meetings on, you know, on the split tax rate.
And we will take that up at our November meeting.
There you go.
So everybody get prepared.
Yep.
Okay. We now have a recommendation to make on the transfer of $107,300,000 from free cash to fiscal year 23 general fund vehicle fuel accounts. It's split out and placed on the backup paperwork. Is there any discussion on this?
I think I'm just gonna, we all know what gas is costing, and I'm not surprised at all. When everybody put their budgets together, it wasn't like that. Whether it comes from the general, there are 2 different ones, but I'm in favor of them both. The increases, because they're there.
Okay.
I'm
Any more?
in
Any more?
favor of this. Oh, sorry, I can't raise my hand.
That's okay. I
This
can't
counts
see
as-
you. So just jump in.
I'm saving you anyways. I didn't want to break the computer, but so I'm in favor of this. I just want to make sure that with the additional funding to the police department, that we're gonna, you know, maintain 4 cruisers on the streets. You know, that's a big part of this, right?
Yes.
So I'm hoping that somebody from the police department will be at our meeting tomorrow to address that question for the mayor.
Okay. All right. All of those who are in favor of transferring $107,300 from free cash for general fund vehicle fuel accounts, please indicate by raising your hand, saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's positive, unanimous. Thank you. Next one, appropriate $8,500 from sewer retained earnings to fiscal year 23 sewer vehicle fuel accounts. Again, anybody have any discussion on that? This is coming out of the enterprise fund for sewer. Okay. Everybody who wants to make a positive recommendation, please indicate. Aye.
Aye.
I
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Appropriate $10,000 from water retained earnings to fiscal year 23 water vehicle fuel accounts. Again, this is the same, except it comes out of water enterprise funds. All those in favor of $10,000 from retained earnings to the fiscal year 23 water vehicle fuel accounts, please indicate. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, we're good. Hang on just a second. Oh, no, don't do that. I just touched my computer for a second and now it wants me to do something and I don't want to sign out. Thank you. Appropriate $14,387 from fiscal year 22 reserve fund to fiscal year 23 weights and measures contracted services. The backup paperwork indicates that we do purchase the services from the state. The state has raised It's charged to us, it's fee that it charges the city of Greenfield. And we really have nothing to say about it, except we have to appropriate the money. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor, would you please indicate by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, that takes us through all the money issues that we needed to get done for tomorrow night's meeting. We do have one other item really on our agenda tonight. I know that there's a lot of people that are signed on to this meeting. I apologize for taking quite a lot of time to get the money issues done, but it's important. We're on a deadline with that. So we have, in the past few months, we have been discussing the City of Greenfield's processes to tax title taking and collection of additional equity. And we have heard from Al Norman and the group that he represents, and we have also heard from the mayor and our treasurer, Kelly Varner. I want to make sure that everybody has received additional paperwork from Mr. Norman. He sent quite an extensive amount of information. I hope you've had a chance to read through that. There are some things that I am very much in favor of in his proposals, items 1 through 10. So I think there can be common ground here. The thing I want to say this evening is that there are a lot of suggestions and recommendations that came through from Mr. Norman. Some of them in regard to the fact that an attorney, a city attorney, should be involved in some of the decision-making regarding his proposal. And also, he has asked that, or stated in his presentation, that there be some ordinance or bylaw changes as well to go along with what he is proposing. Tonight, I want to get some feedback from this committee. I hope that you've prepared yourself with all of this. And so at this point, I will open it up to individual counselors if they want to share their reactions to and their questions and any other comments they have to have right now on this matter. I would like to go forward with that first. So counselors, it's opened up to you. Do you have any comments, thoughts, cares, concerns, questions?
All right, I'll go.
Council DeSorger.
Okay, I always have my hand up there. So, yes, I actually was not totally, prepared to go through one by one of what it was, but I think that I watched the meeting and I read all the information from Kelly, and I agreed with that we had common ground on several of the things. There were suggestions for things that could have been put on the city website. I think maybe we could ask the city how they felt about that. And I did support the idea of sending a resolution to the state last night in the middle of preparing for tonight's meeting, which took a long time. I'm trying to read that H something 503. It's 4 numbers. And I think as a group, maybe for next time we have a resolution that we were supporting that, because I actually don't think that if somebody sells their home, if we're selling somebody's home, that to be making the extra equity on it. I agreed with the philosophy behind the resolution. So I wanted to say that. And I appreciate the fact that people are on this call and are paying attention. I want to hear what other people thought about one by one, or whatever anybody else thought.
Okay. Any other counselors?
I agree that there's taking equity in someone's taxes in someone's home seems to be an antiquated procedure that no longer happens in most states. And so in the principle, I absolutely agree. And I'm still trying to piece together all of the different recommendations. One very clear one seems to be sending a resolution to the state delegation, because it seems like a lot is decided at that level. And so if it's helpful, I would be happy to sit down. It would be the first time that I've spoken municipal and municipal legalese, but I'd be happy to put some time into drafting a resolution and having it before committee chairs, so that the full council has time to digest. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Other counselors?
I guess I could just say, and what would probably maybe be a unpopular opinion, but the conflict for me in this is kind of, I think, what's being presented on a morality level. We wouldn't want to take, nor do I agree with taking necessarily the equity from somebody. I feel like there are channels, there are avenues in place to give people options ahead of time to save their equity. And of course, in extending the circumstance, somebody owns their home outright. It sounds barbaric, right? To take all of that, of course it does. If somebody owns maybe like 20% equity in the place, maybe doesn't sound so terrible, but you'd still want them to have that. My conflict comes with we set rates, we set tax rates for everybody based on a system. And if some people aren't paying what they should be, it puts an undue burden on, and this is where it's totally an unpopular opinion, I'm sure, but it puts an undue burden on the rest going forward, because you're not gaining the amount of the revenue, I guess you say the revenue, that tax base that you should have been gaining. And when you're budgeting, then all of a sudden you're coming up with a shortfall that needs to be made up for. And so who does that go back on? That goes on to everybody who was doing their fair share, or what's considered fair. If we want to talk about how to gauge what's fair, what percentage is, that's obviously a different conversation. But so then what is not to say what's the incentive, but what cause would the city have in those instances where they don't gain back everything, or instead of looking at it as like a profit, from one because another one didn't sell as well at the time or anything like that. I get where those can get messy, but as far as for the general taxpayer, if all of a sudden a percentage of folks are having to put more in the next year because there's not the proper amount collected, what repercussion would that have? And so I feel like there is some sort of mechanism in there, and I don't know how it would be, other than just collecting on it with even interest may not cover it, or the legal fees. So I don't, on the principle of it, don't agree that we should be taking equity out. I can kind of understand why it has been used as a vehicle, and I don't consider it a profit-making thing for the city, and I don't think that that's what's intended for either. So then, yeah, it just becomes a matter of finance and morality meeting in a really terrible place. So I don't, yeah, I sit kind of very conflicted on this, in wanting to make a kind of recommendation myself.
Thank you. Any other counselors?
Chris, I'm going to speak again if I could. I talked to Will Roberts about this at the very beginning when it first came up.
Mhm.
And he's somebody that I respect, and he, he indicated that this is something that many municipalities are like just sending something to the state, that they're in that many cities and towns are, it's just about taking the equity that was in somebody's home. So I just wanted to say that, that's all. I think that we should draft something that has to do something. I think that I read through what we got from Al Norman. I think we have to be careful too, that we're not putting undue, because it's 3-man office, the treasurer's office, and anything that we could put on the website that was, this is easy to be done. And we have people here like the mayor and Liz who may have some expertise in that. How hard were some of those things to do? And any notification that we could give to people, but I don't think we can make it too labor intensive on the treasurer's end either. There is a responsibility that the taxpayer has, but that's all.
Okay, so if I may, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Healy? Did you want to speak?
I will, but I'm kind of conflicted about this as well too. And it's just, I don't think we should be able to take full equity in somebody's home, but on the flip side, opportunity is also given to pay your taxes and do the right thing. And it's been proven that plenty of opportunities are given, right? So it makes it hard because from the other perspective, how many times has the city foreclosed on a property, lost money, right? So sometimes you get a property that's been neglected for 10 years and then you can't even auction it for the amount of money you're owed in taxes. So you're actually in a negative there, right? So there's two sides to every story, but I think excessive equity theft is a problem. And it's kind of a really tricky situation to deal with, and I'm not quite sure how you would deal with it. So I kind of echo Councilor Toronto's feelings on this one. I think it's wrong taking the extra equity, but it's a tricky game to play, right? So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay, so I want a couple of things I want to say about this. Yes, I think that the state system for tax collection, for property tax collection, is antiquated, and in many ways it is draconian. And people, the points have been raised with what Al wrote and what other people have written to us as members of the council. I agreed to take this on basically as a subcommittee because there was no other subcommittee that was interested in taking it on. However, having said that, I feel that we've done a good job of airing the issues and having people speak and lobby for what they think is important and appropriate. But I am not sure that Ways and Means is really the correct place for this. It really doesn't fall within our purview. And in the paperwork that Al has sent all of us and everything else, again, he did mention that we need to have some advice from an attorney on some of the issues that were being proposed. And again, it might get into ordinance change. But at this point, I'm looking to find some common ground. And I really want to move this out to a proper place, but I really don't know where that proper place is. However, recommendation number 10 was for a resolution. And the resolution, the resolution was written as follows, that it was a recommendation for the resolution. The mayor and the council should ask its state delegation to the general court to pass H 3053, abolishing home equity collection beyond debt. There was a number of pages going through everything after that. That was very, very well researched and everything else. But at this point, I want to know if the members of our Ways and Means Committee feel comfortable with moving that resolution out onto council floor. Please let me know what you think. All right, maybe we should take a vote as to what everybody thinks about that resolution.
Can I?
Yes, please go ahead, Councilor Golub.
Thanks. I'm hesitant to send something that deserves so much time and thought to council floor tomorrow. I would like councilors to have more, the council as a whole to have more time to digest it and think about it before voting on it. And that's why I don't know, I never know when to make a motion yet, but I would like to take some time and get something to committee chairs so it can, and then maybe that goes to A&O. I'm on A&O. I hear your question, Chris, and Councilor Forgy, and I have been sitting with that too. Why is this in Ways and Means? But I would like councilors to have more time to make sure that they are clear about what they're voting on before it gets there tomorrow. And one way to do that is sending something through committee chairs, and I'd be happy to work on that. Does that make sense? Thinking this through out loud.
So do you want, I mean, do
I
you
make a
want to
motion?
make? Yes, you can make a motion.
Can a motion be that and feel free to revise this motion and how this would happen, but I would move that I sit down with the language of that we've received from Al Norman for the resolution in support of H3053, and that I get that to committee chairs by, I believe Tuesday is the cutoff, so that committee chairs and then the council has time to digest it. So in hopes that it would get there next month. And I don't know how that motion is shortened, but that's what I'm
That's
moving.
okay. That's perfectly okay. The language is there for the motion. Is there a second to Councilor Golub's motion?
Second, Councilor Healy.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. Okay.
I think that's a
Councilor
great
Disorder.
idea. I think it's a great idea because there was so many things in what we were sent. I think to take that part out is a great idea.
Okay, so this, I want to be clear that this motion is to move this matter back into chairs. Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to be clear.
I do think that would be the best thing to do. I want the full council to have time to digest this.
Okay, thank you. Any more comment on this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, would you indicate by raising your hand, saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We'll take it back and put it onto the chair's agenda. Excellent. Thank you, everyone who was very patient this evening, waiting until the end of our meeting to hear the outcome of what will happen. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you. Thank you again for all your emails and everything else. It's important for us to hear from our constituents. So thank you once again. Is there anybody else who has any other business? I just want to mention a couple of things. We talk about the review of the City of Greenfield's budget process. So I believe it's this Friday at 9:30, the Capitol Incentive Committee, the CIC. We are meeting on Friday at 9:30. This is an organizational meeting. There are 3 of us on this committee. Myself as head of Ways and Means, chair of Ways and Means, excuse me. Jean Wall, who is the chair of construction. And Amy Peretti, who is chair of school committee. The meeting is posted. The meeting will also take place on Zoom, and the meeting will be recorded and televised so that this year everyone will be able to see what goes on within this committee and how decisions are made. This committee will be taking up capital requests that are going to be submitted by department heads. And after we review them, Liz will be our guide through all of this. And after we review them and talk to department heads, we will be making recommendations and sending those to the mayor. Then it's incumbent on the mayor to act upon those recommendations when she puts the capital budget together. So the process is starting now. So hopefully our capital improvements projects will be all decided upon by the end of this fiscal year and will carry forward for presentation in February or March, which is when the budget will appear to everyone. If you have questions, please, you can direct them to Tammy and Kathy and they'll distribute them to any of us, but I would really appreciate Ways and Means. I know a lot of you work during the day, but if you are able to watch the Zoom meetings, please do so, because it's important that you understand where all of these requests are coming from, what gets funded and what doesn't get funded. Very important. So, and this year it's a very open process. So is there any other business? Next month, we will also take up setting the tax rate. I know that's going to be, it's a mystery, but we will get through it. It always is a mystery. If there's no other business, I will just announce that we have our next meeting, November 15th, 2022, 6 p.m. via Zoom. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Toronzo, seconded by DeSorga. Our meeting ends at 8:08 p.m. I thank you all very much. It was a long meeting this evening, but you're great. So thank you once again, and I will see you tomorrow evening.